Welcome back, everybody. This is the Live Fully edition of this live stream where we're talking about all things personal development, going deeper in some of the topics that we talk about on the Balance Fully podcast. I'm your host, Naketa Ren Thigpen, balance and relationship advisor for power couples, married women entrepreneurs, and a few bold leaders, all who are ready to recalibrate and own their right to be more intentionally selfish so they can ultimately create the balance and joy that they deserve. With me today, this amazing woman who I've had so many beautiful conversations with that had me laughing, crying in tears, cracking up, and getting very serious in my advocacy to make sure that we fight for the rights of all the people who are just trying to heal. Today, I want to welcome Alicia Patterson. Please introduce yourself to everyone.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning. My name is Alicia Patterson. I am in Denver, Colorado, and I do women's pelvic health work. I do pelvic floor therapy, which means internal, inside of the body, intravaginal therapy. I'm also a somatic counselor and have a long time history in mental health work. So my pelvic health practice has gotten really busy because of my trauma-informed training and my counseling training. So I'm here to advocate and talk about all of that. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for those of you who don't know, Alicia and I had a recorded conversation on air on Twitter Space or in Twitter Space, as I've been corrected by all the Twitter heads in Twitter Space. I think it was last week where we do an intentionally selfish episode on what the power of being intentionally selfish looks like, and we apply it to the different elements of your way of being, your life, your love, work, all of the things. And we had a phenomenal conversation that I will make sure to drop the link to in about a week when Twitter allows it to render, because that's a whole thing. Because that conversation was powerful and palpable for all of you who are really interested in making sure that your health inside and outside of your body is always highest priority so that you can show up fully and do all the things that you are charged to do to create the imprints in this earth the way hopefully many of you on LinkedIn at least and Twitter are charged to do. So Alicia was breaking down something to me. So, a lot of you may or may not know that I'm also a sexologist, a clinical social worker, trauma informed specialist from back in the day before the personal development company started. May will be 11 years old. And all those tools show up for me. But I like to refer out to experts like Alicia who go deeper into ways that I would never go because I'm not certified to do. And some things I just don't want to do, even though I am certified to do them. Now, one thing that I am not certified in, and one thing I am not doing, is Alicia's specialty with going literally inside the body of a woman to help her heal, to repair. I'm going to use the word recalibrate a little bit because sometimes they already feel strong physically, but maybe there might be an emotional breakdown or something else that's going on with the body where they're not feeling as powerful in their pleasure zone as they should be and deserve to be ultimately. And one of the things that came up was yoni eggs because we know they're so popular and there's all different kinds of materials that they're made out of. Some are porous, some are solid, some are glass. Eek! There's all kinds of things that these well decorated, beautiful eggs look like, but they not, shouldn't necessarily go into your body. And because I'm always thinking about women and the power that we have going forward into every single relationship, starting with the one with ourself and our body, I really value Alicia's expertise and why you have to be careful with doing things that involve inserting anything into your vagina, especially with another material like a yoni egg. Alicia, can you share a little bit about that?
Mm-hmm. I have so much to say
I
about
know.
all of this. Yeah. Let's see. So I always want to give the disclaimer I'm not trying to smash the
No.
tool or the practice. It's beautiful, it has, I think it's Taoism, ancient roots. It's a powerful practice. And the unfortunate thing, so, backstory on me, I've mostly been in my community working locally. Since the pandemic, I've started to be online more.
Yeah.
And what I'm seeing online sometimes disturbs me. I come across a lot of e commerce that I don't really know what they're selling because I'm not buying it, but what it looks like to me is very faulty made or cheap products that are not, I wouldn't be putting that inside of my body with everything that I know about the pelvis.
Mhm.
And I have asked questions about it, and I've looked at it and I've said, well, what's the possible benefit of that? And one of the unfortunate pieces, and I'm also not equipped to talk about the production of these products because I don't have my own facility.
Right.
I'm not a brand. I'm not a pleasure tool supplier,
Mhm.
but I do have some brands that I love and respect, and I know what goes into their process, and they have really high quality products that are safe to put on the inside of the body. And some of what they have shared with me is very unfortunate about how these really low quality, very affordable, low cost products get sold online and what they're made of. So, an example is if something is made in a way that can break down because of the fluids in your body, the stone could possibly break on the inside of your body. And, little chips of stones, like, I don't want that. That is
Not in my hoo-ha. No. Mm-mm.
recipe for infection.
Mhm.
A lot of those products are also made with um, glue. We don't want toxic glue on the inside of our very spongy, receptive tissues. So, and then we go, well, what do we do with that? And if we want to use an egg, well, then what do we need to know? And so I'm not against eggs, and they can be beautiful to, you know, for example, a pleasure wand is sometimes very large and it can
Mhm.
be intimidating for people. And people that have any type of chronic pelvic floor dysfunction or pain or
Yeah.
holding or gripping, they're looking at this wand and going, like, I'm not ready for that. And
Mhm.
the eggs can be, they're pretty small sometimes. Some of them are larger, but they can be very gentle, and they just
Mhm.
kind of will roll around and touch different parts of your pelvic tissue, which can feel helpful and healing and very gentle.
Yeah.
It's not aggressive to use the wand, but they are larger sometimes.
Mhm.
So, um, my recommendation is to research the brand that you're going to buy from. Only buy stable stones, which is usually jade or obsidian, and ask the brand about their ethical practices, because a lot of the crystals and the stones are
Mhm.
mined in places in the world where there's pretty horrible practices going on about where the products, so where do they get the materials and how are they made. And
Mhm.
we're all just trying to live and make money and support ourselves.
Yeah.
And there are some products being sold that I'm like, no, no, you don't want to be putting, like rose quartz, for example, is not really a stable stone. It's very
Right.
light, it can break. I've heard so many stories of people saying, oh, I dropped my tool and it shattered. And I was like, oh, okay, so how do you feel about that being on the inside of your body?
Right.
And I think that um, it's really important for all of us to do our work around our own body. And it is our job to research and look into, what am I buying and what am I using this for? And do
Mhm.
I have the education? And I didn't do that. I got into this world and I was like, oh, cool. And I bought all these things and I started trying them. And
Mhm.
I wish I had had someone saying what I'm saying to me at a young age. And I also feel really grateful that when I got into this, it had not become popular yet, and now it is totally, it's everywhere you look.
Mhm.
Every time I log into my social media, I'm being sold a lot of different products and tools,
Yeah.
and it's cool because it's sex positive, and there's always a shadow and an
Yeah.
underbelly anytime something gets very popular.
Absolutely. I was reading too about, like, we know for many of the women who have experienced menses, because there is a small population of women who never experience that. But for those who do, you've read about toxic shock syndrome with tampons. You think of it for that. You don't think about it for other non tampon related objects like a yoni egg, which can create a very huge explosion of bacteria, to your point, if it's not created out of the right products, as well as knowing what your body can handle. Because I was seeing like the different sizes of the eggs, and the bigger eggs are actually for the beginners, where the smaller eggs, which can slide into all the places, are really meant if you already feel comfortable with the strength of your pelvic floor. And I know that that's a huge part of the work that you do out in Denver, where you can physically access someone, where I know virtually is a little different these days.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for, what I wish was just baseline is that we all had education about the range of products and
Mm-hmm.
tools and what they are used for. And I do teach about that and I talk about that quite a bit. And clients come in and they're going, oh, what are all these things? And so giving a baseline of education. For example, a larger egg, yes, is more for beginners and it's
Mm-hmm.
easier to feel. There's just more surface levels. So it's,
Mm-hmm.
you know, internal work and learning about the inside of our bodies helps us with deceptions, which is proprioception and interoception and teroception. And it's this like learning about, okay, this is where that tool is, and this is what I feel. And
Mm-hmm.
this is where the touch of a human body is, and this is what I feel there. It can be very disorienting in the beginning, and these tools can totally help us slow down and be
Yeah.
empowered and learn about ourselves. And a lot of times I'll see people with pelvic weakness or some type of prolapse, and they come in and they're going, oh, I have this yoni egg. And somebody told me if I started using it, it would just heal everything. And I'm like, well, that's actually pretty heavy and it's putting more weight on your pelvic tissues, and you're already having this weak kind of
Mm-hmm.
like, it doesn't feel great to say it, but the tissue's kind of like sagging a little
Yeah.
bit and we can't put more weight on it, it can do damage. It's not a good
Mm-hmm.
idea. So anytime someone has pelvic weakness or there's a prolapse issue going on, I recommend the Lalo Luna beads, which are these tiny, tiny little beads, and they're like pelvic weight training. And they're light and they're not going to put too much pressure. And they have a little guider that you can like guide it into different positions. And most people don't know about those products. Most people
Mm-hmm.
know about these eggs. And it's just a challenging dynamic with the uptick in the sacred sexuality world and the spiritual world and influencers. And a lot of them have no training to work
Yeah.
with humans. They have zero credentials, they have zero
Absolutely.
training. And as a health practitioner, it bothers me and it upsets me because then I'm cleaning that up in my office and I'm like, well, all of whatever
Mm-hmm.
we're recovering from now could have been avoided and
Yeah.
it's painful.
Absolutely. And that's right before you said it, I was thinking you're getting the backlash of all of that with these beautiful women, these beautiful souls that are coming, feeling disheartened. Many of them feel shameful about those private experiences that they were having without having guidance and support from an expert like yourself. And really, in addition to going to an expert, because there's a gap area between finding you, right? Even realizing that you exist as a trained professional, which is very unicorn of you, because not only are you trained in women's pelvic health, but you also come from the psychotherapy world. So you have clinical knowledge, which is priceless on so many levels. And then you also went deeper and you're trauma informed, which is a whole nother. And you and I vibe on that for so many reasons. Alicia and I were joking, like we're just the same exact person on opposite sides of the United States with our backgrounds. It was crazy, from emergency rooms and crisis centers to all of it was so similar. But you're able to bring that into your awareness and know that some of the women are maybe dealing with more than just the physical repercussions of having use pleasure tools or strengthening tools, because not every woman is using a yoni egg like tool simply for pleasure. Many of them are like, hey, I had 5 kids, I had a hysterectomy, I had some fibroids removed, whatever the case is, that was just normal being that happened. And you thought that this colorful $70, $50, $300 item was going to be a part of a collection of healing for you, and it wasn't. But the gap that I want to point out is this conversation. There needs to be more of these conversations with people who are not only credentialed, but compassionate. Because you and I both know there are a lot of people with the certifications, but are not necessarily compassionate to what women are experiencing because they're more in a I told you so,
Mhm.
which you can't really tell someone so if they don't even know you exist, right? If they don't even know that there is help and support and guidance from someone who can hold space for their healing. So
Mhm.
I value that you took this pivot in your career that way. I went in a different way towards personal development and relationship, right? And you went that way. And I think it's a beautiful marriage of sorts for you to
Thank
be
you.
able to hold space. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's absolutely it's so vulnerable, you know? I mean, to talk about, even just to talk about it, the inside of our bodies, and to be, and I talk about this a lot, it's all over my website. I really try, I feel like the industries and healthcare and spirituality generally, it can veer toward pathology, and pathology sometimes is important, and a lot of people come into my office feeling very pathologized, and they
Hmm.
feel that they're broken and something's wrong with them,
Come
and
on. Hmm.
usually it's like, "Oh, well, that's actually very common, and I don't know where you heard that or where you got that message," and so I like to stay out of pathology, but still be trauma informed with medical awareness and, anatomy and science. Like, I love the spirituality. I love those texts. I really get into it. Me as a person, I'm kind of like way out there. But when it comes to my clinical work, I don't want to be so unreachable. And I've also had people come into my office and say, all of the spiritual and the emotional stuff, I don't get it, and
Hmm.
I feel like something's wrong with me because I can't access that.
Oh,
So
no.
there's just so much blame and shame out there generally about the
Hmm.
body, about female sexuality that is, we're coming in with that.
Hmm.
I have that. I've worked on that. It's
Hmm.
okay. It's part of our
Hmm.
story.
Hmm.
And there's this kind of middle way where I want people to feel so held and safe, and
Yeah.
also that, like, there's ground and stability, and that we're not just like, "Oh, let's see what's going on in there today." It's like there's a reason, there's intention, there's treatment planning, there's symptom assessment, and, um, I wish that there were more people doing that, and I do feel like a unicorn, and it's also been very isolating for me.
Yeah. Right.
So there's always 2 sides to everything. I've had amazing success in my business, and I also don't have a lot of people around me. I have an incredible therapeutic community with
Hmm.
mental health, and then when it
Hmm.
comes to this pelvic health thing, I'm going, "Where are the people?" I have, like, less than 10. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly on so many levels. And part of it is because of the popularity of this very niched aspect of the work that you do, that for many people, it was a struggle just to be respected in it as a real thing that someone could receive help with. Because there's a physical therapy component to what you do. And I know you were trained in PT as well, or by PT professionals to make sure that when you physically touch and go in and help strengthen and do all the things, all the little nuances of what you do, that you were not endangering people and that you were doing it correctly.
Mhm.
I can relate to that on so many levels. As a balance and relationship advisor, it's a category that I had to create to make sure people weren't putting me in a life coach lane. Nothing wrong with life coaches. Life coaches are great, but I'm a licensed clinical social worker, psychotherapist, and trauma specialist. So crossing over into life coaching without making a distinction of where my depth was going was really challenging because people kept trying to put me in that box. And
Mhm.
coaching is such a tiny, it's like 10% of
Mhm.
what I do. Being a clinician, because the same, I don't pathologize either with diagnosing. Like, I can catch when someone has ADHD and all the things. Obviously I'm a great diagnostician, but that's not my job to
Mhm.
do that in a personal development company. And knowing that there's all these other components, trying to find trying to attract, let me reframe that language, trying to attract other aligned minds like yourself that get it, even if you don't do exactly what I do the way that I do it, knowing that as a metaphysician, as someone who's very tied to the awareness of the spiritual world, that doesn't have to be a thing that is forced onto other people. It's just something that helps me do what I do better. But it's okay if other people aren't there, don't want to be there, don't care about being there, right? As long as they respect. When you say, Naketa, how do you do all the things that you do? How are you so great and amazing at that? How do you have all these answers? When I tell you how I got it, don't be mad, right? Like you can't, because people will be like, oh, well, that's too much. That's fine. That's why you pay me. You invested in yourself through our company because you have tapped in to the shortcut of sorts, which I know is exactly the benefit of working with you, even though we do very different things. And it's why I had to love on you for some Live Fully time on LinkedIn.
Thank you.
Before we wrap up, I just want to do a tether back to the intentionally selfish conversation we did on Twitter when we were both going in the conversation about the causation versus correlation and the shaming and blaming that can come in the culture. And one of the threads of that conversation, which I think is poignant to hear, is making sure that people know that there is another space. There are people out here like Naketa Ren Thigpen, like Alicia Patterson, and many, many other people, although we all feel like anomalies kind of floating out on the edges of all the loud noise and chaos of what's popular. There are people out here who really care and who really want women to be whole and to be healthy and to thrive at the end of the day without sacrificing themselves because they feel like they have to hide. I can be amazing at business, but I won't have good pleasure for myself or with my partner. I can get through it like it's a chore, but not actually enjoy it because I'm ashamed to say that something isn't right, something's going on. Whether you used a specific toy or not, that may have exacerbated an issue. I won't necessarily say caused, but exacerbated an issue. There is a safe place for you. There are people like Alicia Patterson who are more than qualified because she is a unicorn to be able to support you and guide you in the healing process. And now we've taken off the barrier of you not knowing that someone like Alicia Patterson exists because you've been introduced to her. So now I need you to introduce her to your friends. Make sure you share this episode that's 15, 20 minutes, whatever it is. Make sure that you listen to the Bounce Bully podcast because Alicia's going to be on there very soon too. Whoop, whoop. And having a whole nother conversation that's linked to her story, her journey with creating work life and love balance for herself through her business. I'm very excited about all the ways that Alicia is dedicated to helping, supporting, and guiding women in this world. Any final notes from you?
Thank you. Yeah, the only thing I do want to say, I'm not a PT. Mm-hmm. I am a mental health licensed professional. I trained with a PT who I'm so grateful. You know, she was one of the PTs that said this is emotional, and she created a training and she opened it up to people who are not PTs. So I am credentialed under massage, and that is a whole thing in this country. There are areas where it's kind of okay. That's kind of where I am. It's like they don't say you can't, but they don't say you can. Yeah. In California, it's totally accepted and loved on, as in Oregon and I think Washington State. And then there are places like New York and Florida and Texas, and I think my home place, Maryland and DC, where it's illegal and you cannot do internal work, and there are a lot of people doing it, but it's totally under the radar. You know, it's like midwives who have no sign on their door and they're saying, oh, nobody really knows what I do, but then I'm down the hall, you know. It's so there's a lot of dynamics and ethical pieces to be aware of around credentialing and who you're seeing and how they're trained. And that's what I advocate for. If you're going to see somebody that's going to touch your body, ask what their process is, ask what their credentials are, ask what their experience is, ask what their paperwork is like. And me too, you know, I have these credentials and I love working with people all over, and I have people sign an agreement that says this is not psychotherapy, even though I'm a psychotherapist. And if I am in psychotherapy with someone, that's a very different relationship. So it's all important, and we're all learning, and I'm happy to be a resource, and I'm pretty out there and sharing about all of this, and that also is vulnerable. I am exposing myself, and I've got
Yeah.
plenty of pushback and plenty of people tearing this apart and not agreeing, and I'm like,
Mhm.
well, I think that they have some work to do about shame about this work and about their own body. And that's where I'm like, we all have a root, we all have a pelvis, we all have these magical tissues in the base of our body, and we could do this safely and be like good with each other.
Absolutely. I love how you pointed out the importance of switching hats, because many of us, especially as ambitious women, have multiple hats that some are got dust on them because you didn't touch them in a while, but they're just kind
Yeah.
of sitting there, right? But when you are flowing between hats in an active way, being okay to have boundaries with not only your clients but with yourself, and saying, okay, this, I know that you know that I do all the things, but let's separate to make sure that you're not confused, but also so I can refer you and be a resource out if what you're asking me for isn't something that is in alignment with what I want to do right now. Because that's a whole nother conversation that you and I could probably have on the podcast or a different space or another Live Fully LinkedIn if I can grab some more time from you.
Mhm.
But just the professional side of not needing to be the 360-degree place for people when you no longer actually are interested in that aspect of your work, or you're not even up to date on that aspect of what you used to be really skilled at. So I like that you're separating, like, yes, I'm a psychotherapist, I can do that too, but I have to want to, first of all, because I don't want to with all the people. But I also really am passionate about women's pelvic health and really being able to do this. So I'm separating so you're clear what we're, co-creating together when we do the work.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so important. And I'm very grateful. When I was young, I got into counseling work when I was 26 years old. I mean, sometimes I'm like, wow, that was an interesting choice, that age. And I had such
Mhm.
incredible training and mentors. And I did my internship at a top trauma center in Denver. And I remember being young and, kind of whatever, I was learning and I had learning curves. And I remember my supervisors being like, excuse me, hello. And this like scooting in and helping me realize that this impacts people's lives and we have a lot of power that is often not spoken, and we have expectations put on us, and we need to be clear about all of that. So
Mhm.
that's a big part of what I talk with people about, is all of that, the nature of the relationship, the expectations on treatment. Pressure creates certain pelvic patterns.
Mm,
There's so many nuances around all of this, and I love that we're talking about this when we started with yoni eggs. This like kind of surfacey, like, oh, what is
yeah,
that? Like a fun toy, and
right.
there's so much underneath it that I really
Yeah.
appreciate you opening
Thank
the
you.
dialogue for. Thank you.
I appreciate you too. I think the pun of there being so much underneath is hilarious on so many
Yes,
levels.
yes.
Alicia, you are fantastic. You know that I'm already loving on you on and off air.
Mhm.
Where can people connect with you?
Thank you. My website is probably the best hub. My website is alicianpatterson.com, N as in Nancy. My middle name is not Nancy. I say N as in Nancy so that you
I
don't
do
know my
too.
middle name. alicianpatterson.com. That has a lot of information. You can join my email list. I have a free ebook. All my social channels are linked there. So website is a good place to go if you want to learn more.
That is perfect. Thank you so much for carving out time. Thank you for letting me keep you past your time. I'm so grateful for you on so many levels. You're just an awesome unicorn, and I want you to stay that way. I don't want you to be corrupted by this world. So stay a
Thank
unicorn. You even got the hair, right? Like you got the
That's
hair of a
right,
unicorn.
yeah.
Thank you so much. And for everyone who's tuning in live or on replay, both LinkedIn and Twitter, we appreciate you all day, every day. We will not see you next Wednesday here because usually, if there's a fourth or fifth week, that is a amplified intimacy week for myself, for my clients. We're infusing all the things that we're learning on for ourselves throughout the rest of the month. So I will see you the first Wednesday in April to come back right here at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Uh, Literally LinkedIn or Twitter, whichever one you're logging in for, it is live and syndicated in both places. And if you have questions, feel free to email me. We understand that some things are not meant to put in the comments. We love the comments and we will respond there. But if there's something unique that's going on, feel free to email me at asknaketa@thigpro.com. It's right under my profile. And if you have a question for Alicia that you're just like, oh, I didn't go to her website, send it to me. I will make sure that I get it directly over to Alicia. I promise. In the interim, I want you to enjoy the balance of your day, but remember, do it boldly so you can live fully.